Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Todd Nilsson, and I am one of the volunteer organizers for the Catalyzing the Future series of events. I'm here with my good colleague and friend, Mr. Whit Raymond. Hello, Whit.
Hello,
how are you
everybody.
this morning?
Hello, everybody. Great.
We are here at the kickoff to two pro bono symposium events today called Reflection and Foresight. And we've got a really terrific panel of guests that we're going to be bringing onto the stream here in just a second. If you haven't been with us before or any of our previous events, the Catalyzing the Future events are all about helping us to think a little bit differently about the ways in which we live our lives, the ways in which we engage as professionals, the ways that we lead our businesses. And we're trying to think of smarter ways to go about planning our future endeavors, especially in light of an increasingly complex and vague and changeable world where I think we need to use a little more full spectrum in our approach to thinking and writing and doing in our lives. So with that in mind, I'm going to start bringing some of our guests in and talking about them individually in no particular order. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
Welcome, Tias. Hi, Sherrie, Araceli, Heather, and Alan. Just very quickly, just in welcoming everybody, Araceli Avionn is one of the authors of Power Moms 3.0, and which is about women owning their power, being confident and invisible strengths, being a preserver and an overcomer, winning and restoring one's power. And Araceli is very much about promoting our invisible strengths. We also welcome from Power Moms, one of the authors, Sherrie Walton, who is also very much about living a purposeful life. In addition to that, we're welcoming Kate Arms, agile coach and podcaster focused on dealing with trauma and stress. Heather Cresswell of the Alchemy Academy from South Africa, who is thought and written considerably about resilience. She's the creator of the Flow Code and the Wolf Model, which we may learn a little bit more about today. And then also from South Africa, Sias Ferreira, who is all about resilience and anti-fragile leadership for multi-generational futures. Brilliant guy. And then finally, last but not least, Mr. Alan Camus, who is a leader and practitioner on the ground, working with organizations, here to offer us a dose of reality. Welcome, everybody.
And with that, we love to get started here. There are two aspects. We want to talk, do some time doing some reflections on 2020, and then we're going to spend the next half of the time talking about 2021 in terms of foresight and what we see going on. So we thought as a way to begin, just to dive in here, is for us to just think about a phrase, and you think about 2020. If there's any perspective, a phrase that for you would capture for you what 2020 has been, and what is that? And then we can go around and hear everybody, and then we can have some more questions and discussion about that. So as we take some time, I give you each a second just to think about that, and anybody who wants to do it, dive in. Anybody ready to go on this one?
I'm happy to kick it off.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, so for me, when I think about 2020, I think of 2020 as the year that everyone had to pivot hard.
Everyone has a pivot hard?
Like everyone had to pivot hard and fast. Nobody got the hook.
Yeah. Great. All right, let's keep going. Sias, what about you? Or Sherrie, go ahead.
When I think about 2020, the word comes to mind: awakening. I think 2020 caused me personally, and just even things that I saw around the world, for things to come alive, things that places that had been sleeping within us, areas that we've kind of put to the side. We now had to come face to face with it, so it did not allow any one of us to not make decisions or take an introspective approach to ourselves. So my word is awakening.
Great. Thank you. Good. Yeah. Heather?
Yeah, I think for me, the words that come to mind is unforgettable. Nobody's escaped unscathed, and my more empowering word is synthesis, because I think what we've needed to do is we've needed to pull together so many different elements of ourselves. We've had to synthesize our own process, synthesize the processes within our businesses, within all of our relationships as they've changed, and in our communities and countries. So
That's great. Yeah.
Mm.
That's great. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah,
See,
I
us,
think-
you were going to go in there. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I think for me, I would say surf's up. So I think this year I really learned to surf bigger waves than I've ever had to surf. Not just the corona waves, but everything that came with it. So a quote that stood out for me this year was that said, "You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." So that was really for me big this year, is to learn to surf this new world that we are going into. And I fell down many times, but that's okay. I just keep on learning to surf.
That's great. Good. Okay.
Alan, what did you have?
Sure. The word that has been coming to mind for me quite a bit lately is irrelevance. I think about the number of things that seemed important or that were high on the list a year ago that are just totally irrelevant today, and it's in the business setting at least, and from an employee satisfaction standpoint, how this year has dramatically changed what's important to people, and what used to be important in many aspects is totally irrelevant today.
Great. Okay. Terrific.
And welcome back in, Araceli. I forgot. Were you able to offer a reflection on the year? What's your word?
Right. I hope you can hear me. I guess I decided to work power while I'm here. So my reflection, my one word that 2020 has turned in is fragile. I feel that we're in a fragile state and things have turned fragile. And what I mean by fragile is things have become more vulnerable and more delicate. And we're having to, the way we interact with people, our business, our work, we're handling everyone in a more delicate state to be more mindful of everything that's going on around us. So I feel that in 2020, we've done everything more fragile. We've handled everything with care, just so that we could be more aware of the people around us and how 2020 is affecting us differently. So 2020 for me has been a very fragile state of mind in handling and caring for others.
I love that. That's great. That's great. Whit, do you have one, actually?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. Holy, okay. So I would say it is. I would say it's a turning point, but it's over time. It's not instantaneous. I feel as though I wrote to somebody last night that I'm in transition, and I'm trying to size up what that is, because it's external, it's internal, it's everywhere. So that's what I'd say. That's a phrase. How about for you, Todd?
I've got a quote, and then I think a word to summarize it. I'm going to steal a little bit from Cy for that word. The quote is from an 80s movie, which dates me a bit, called Adventures in Babysitting. And there's this moment where the babysitter comes in with these kids onto the stage, and it's this big audience, and they're doing a musical performance, and they're just trying to leave, and the guy on stage says, "Nobody gets out of here without singing the blues." and I love that. It's one of these things that stuck. I think it's one of the only things that stuck with me from the movie. It was a cute movie, but that idea that we're all confronted by something. I think for me the year was the word of the year was edge. I think we met our edge, and or those of us that were reflecting on it and thinking about it. And so I've been kind of turning that around in my head And I feel like I had to sing the blues this year, and many of us did. And how we move on beyond that is the question. And so I loved all these other words that kind of came together through this: awakening, unforgettable, surfs up. I thought that was cool. The irrelevance of things, fragility, and turning point. I'm wondering if there's some themes that maybe kind of cut across all of this that we could talk about.
Yeah, I don't sort of know how to sort of summarize it neatly, but I think one of the things that we've seen in 2020 is how capable individual people, organizations, systems, that whatever hold on you're talking about, we've seen everybody revealing their capacity to surf. And so some people have been able to surf into this transition phase with elegance and grace, and some people have completely fallen apart in the face of it, and the same with organizations.
And the two are related, right?
Right, and a lot of these different words that have come up have reflected different capacities to surf.
Good.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up just on something that Alan said, because I've been thinking about what has become irrelevant and what has really changed for us. And some of the things that came up for me were, we've moved from looking at how do we get value to what our values are, and living from our values instead of how do we get, how do we get. We had to shift that focus from what's in it for me to how do we get it to everybody. Moving from just being focused on profit to our purpose. And all of those words and how those things seem so important at the beginning of the year, when I was at a talk and it was floating around that 2020 was going to be the year of plenty. And we were all confronted with this. So I think and just really moving from being transactional to being connected in many different ways.
That's great. Yeah. What do others hear? Just to get some more thoughts.
I want to jump in there. What I like about 2020, I know that we can talk about the. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay. What I like about 2020, and although we did have the blues and everything that went along with that, is that it challenged us as leaders to take our own medicine. Right, because we're constantly giving 5 steps to this and 7 methods of breakthrough, but then now we literally have to come face to face with the words that we teach our clients and tell them to overcome, persevere. What does that look like when we literally have to walk through that in the unknown? So I believe that it calls us to be on our toes. It calls us to reinvent ourselves. It calls us to do some things that, although it was not and did not feel good at the time, I believe that we're going to be satisfied with the outcome. So, just kind of jumping on to what everyone else has said, I agree with all those words, but I also say it's now caused us to have a different perspective of ourselves. It's caused us to have a different perspective of how we do things, and it's caused us to shift and pivot, like someone said, pivot. It's required us to pivot in order to survive.
Yeah. I have to say, I think for me, remember in the beginning of 2020, we said we're going to have 2020 vision. I think if I connect to what Alan said, we definitely had 2020 vision this year. It just didn't came in the package that we thought it would. So I think that's definitely struck for me this year. Something that
surprise.
We all got thrown into an unexpected and unplanned and unwanted transition.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It does raise the question, like, what is the perspective that we want to gain from 2020 that can have relevance for what we want to be doing going forward? Any thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
I think a broader view of what you just asked with is what are we going to do with 2021, right? So
yes.
For me, I use the word irrelevance. How much was irrelevant in 2020? And other things I've heard, the term people use of, is this great equalizer and this leveling. And one of the things we talk about where I work quite a bit is, so myself, I've been a remote employee for many years. Where I work, we don't have an office here in New Jersey. But the majority of employees, worked in offices and had their local, office cultures and environments. We are now all remote employees, and it has changed the dynamic of how we work together and how we interact and meeting dynamics, all these things that companies struggle with. We now no longer struggle with as a factor of this. So, and we're not alone, right? But so now when you look forward into the next year, who's going to take the opportunity to leverage these learnings and truly kind of reinvent and reshape themselves into the future versus who is going to, who's just waiting to get back and is going to potentially maybe lose the opportunity to take advantage of so much that we've learned in the last number of months.
Yeah. I have to agree with that, and I think that in the work we've done this year, we did a whole series on leadership in crisis. And when you work with leaders, we said, just remember, it's not just about surviving the crisis. It's about transformation. And if you're not going to continue on this transition, as you said, then you are going to go back, and it's going to take years to get ahead again. So you have to almost keep on pushing through, right? And it's difficult.
Right.
I mean, no doubt about it. It's not easy. But we can't say we're just surviving a crisis. We have to really think, are we transforming ourselves and our company through this crisis?
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm sorry, somebody's going to say something. I missed that.
Well, I was going to say, I think of transitions often through the lens of rites of passage. And I think we've got an opportunity here to be conscious about who we're growing into as a race, as an organization, as an individual, sort of once again, at all those different levels. And it requires sort of going back to, as people mentioned, our values. Who do we really want to be? What is relevant? What is irrelevant? What are the extra processes that we don't need? We're living in a world that we know has wicked, wicked problems. And my hope is that we can actually go back to what is actually essential to free up some energy to actually deal with those wicked problems.
Yeah. It's reminded, some people are talking about how, when you think about values, I think of values as like what's important. And so that's what I hear, part of this, like getting hold of what's important. And then I also hear about purpose, which is one of the things I heard which is when the external world is chaotic, one of the things you can do to guide yourself is be very clear about your own purpose. What is it you're committed to? And then I'd also add on the values that go with that. So purpose is where am I going? And I'm just curious whether anybody had any reactions to that or different views on it.
Right. I think that's good when you mention what is my purpose and where am I going? Because 2020 has really had us reflect on how we impact others and how we're impacting this world and what we want to leave behind if we, exit early. And so I think that's really important to where we're now navigating through, like, not what is my legacy, but in the same sense, what is my legacy within my family? What is my legacy within the workplace? How am I impacting other people's lives so that they can feel comfortable navigating through this tumultuous world as well? And so I think it is good to look at what is your purpose and what you're giving back in, and what do you feel is going to be an impact into this world. And so I think you're spot on to where you're saying sometimes we have to take a step back and understand what it is that we're valuing and what we're putting out there. What is the energy that we're putting out here in this world for others to feel? And so I think you made a very valuable point there.
Okay, great.
I want to chime in on the purpose because I love to have purpose conversations. I think what it did was also let us know that we need to move with urgency, because a lot of times we put what we know we should be doing and things that we value, we put those on the back burner thinking we have more time. And I believe that 2020 showed us we don't know how much time we have to live out this purpose and live out this life. So now that you've been given more time, because now most of us are home, we don't have to commute to take our children to school, we don't have to commute to work. Now that we had more time, what did we do with it? Now that we've said, if I had more time in my schedule, I would do this. Now that we've had the more time, did we do it? Did we check any of those things off? So when we talk about purpose, we need to understand that purpose has an expiration date. You know, so what are we doing when we leave out of 2020 to 2021? What have we done within that area of our purpose?
It's great.
And I think that's so valid, because I think when we connected to our purpose, it pulls us forward, and it gives us the resilience to be able to overcome those challenges and overcome those obstacles. So, you know, in the middle of this whole crisis, I'd always had my training and coaching and mentoring business as a side hustle, and I actually resigned from my job, and everyone was going, "Are you crazy? Like, you've got a salary." But this desire and this pulling of, I'm not doing my purpose, and this is exactly what you were saying. You know, we don't necessarily know how much time we've got, and the big question I was faced with was, you know, so if this is it, am I satisfied with the difference and the impact that I've made? And the answer was no. And so I did have that sense of urgency as well. And I think that's the thing to take forward into 21, and really not synthesize, but use alchemy to take all of these lessons that we've learned and turn it into gold, so that it becomes our foundation. And it's like this rock that we can stand on and launch ourselves into 2021 in.
Yeah, you know, Heather, I'm just listening to you talking about pivoting your career, and I had exactly the same experience in 2020. I made the opposite decision. I had been working as a private independent coach, and I was having lots of impact in families, but not having systemic impact in organizations that I wanted to have. And so I stepped into an organization because I want to have impact within the organization, because it's having bigger impact than I was able to have as a private coach. So I think that that's really revealing. Like, everybody's figuring out where they fit in these puzzles.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I think that actually, for me, is important to note, and I think that's what you said, Araceli, in the beginning, is that we worked with empathy this year, took care of things. And the fact is, we are in the same storm, but we're definitely not in the same boat. And we are also not in the same part of the storm. So talking about values and purpose is really nice if you can talk about it. But the reality is, many parts in South Africa, people had just to survive. So they didn't have time to think about values or purpose. They just had to put food on the table for their families.
Interesting.
So I think a lot of people are still just surviving. And my question to myself is, how am I helping people to get from survival to really thriving through this crisis?
And do you have a thought on that? What it takes?
Yeah, I think what everyone is saying is actually what you should do. You should ask that questions. What's my values? What do I really stand for? Take their relevance out. I think that is so important, because we have to make ourselves really lean at this stage to be able to go into 2021 in a healthy way, and come back to the core of who you are, the core of what makes life. But I don't think I have all the answers. I think I'm still dealing with it myself and learning to do this. So I think I'm learning new skills I still don't know about.
Yeah. You point out the limits that lots of us have been pushed against.
All right, Kate, go ahead.
I was going to say, you point out the limits that so many people have been pushed up against. You know, some of us have limits about how we're having impact and whether the position that we're in is having impact. And some of us as people have had limits about, like, how do I actually survive this year? And at whichever level it is, being face to face with those limits is really challenging.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And
Alan, are you going to say something, Alan? Or I didn't know if you were going to chime in there.
I was just going to comment that it's interesting to hear all these different kind of perspectives and experiences, but they all seem to tie together for me around active decision making and true self-awareness. And when I think about all that's happened this year, I think about how so many things that we might have taken for granted or just ignored in the past have such significant implications now, where we are active decision makers. And whether it's, the active decision to shop local, or the active decision to stand near or far from somebody, or on and on, all these active decisions that in the past we maybe paid no attention to, or we just wrote off as just our local culture, or what my parents did, or what have you. And now we some of us, more than others, are very attuned to the decisions they make. I'm probably in the other category, but some people are very attuned to kind of their daily decisions. But I think we all have the opportunity to just be so much more thoughtful and really pay attention to what we're doing and what we're doing for ourselves, our families, but what these things are doing also, how they impact others.
Yeah. I like that you say that. I wanted to mention something along those lines of as also when you said a lot of people are trying to survive and what are we doing to survive? And I think at the beginning of this crisis, a lot of what surviving is we weren't really thinking through what it took to survive. So we were moving a lot, but what were we doing that was productive? And I saw that in my own life because we're like, oh my God, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. Yeah. And upon completing all these items that I said I needed to do, I turned around and I'm like, where did this get me? So I had to become more strategic and slow down to think about what it is, what does it take to survive? And for me, what does it mean to survive? What are the things that are important that will lead me into 2021 in a healthy state, in a healthy mental state, and things of that nature? So it was, I think we all, in some sense, went into survival mode. But then also had to take a step back to ensure that survival mode was actually productive mode to get us to that next level where we want it to be.
And I believe strategy, and just chiming into that, strategy separates us from those that are really pursuing the things that they are supposed to be doing versus those that are just in the rat race, and I believe that 2020 caused even me to just sit and say, okay, like you said, is this necessary right now? If you're always in survival mode, it's like it works in contradiction to where you want to go, so it's hard. Obviously, when you're in the middle of something, it's hard to tell someone to sit still, but the only way to fix it is to sit still. The only way to just find out what that next step is to get quiet enough to even hear your thoughts, So as long as you continue to go in that cycle of saying, okay, I have to survive today, then you'll never be able to plan for tomorrow, which contradicts where you're trying to go. So although it sounds like, a lot of fluff sometimes, is like live your purpose, the reality is your purpose actually puts you to that next step to where you need to be, where you don't have to work as hard. That's something that I've been learning within myself. If I sit in here and if I stay aligned with where the direction I'm supposed to go, I don't have as many distractions. I'm able to think clearer, and I'm actually able to turn down some things that I normally would have done just because it sounded like a good idea. But now it says, okay, does this actually lead me closer to where I'm supposed to be going? So I just wanted to add that to what you said, Araceli.
Yeah, if I could build on that.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, if I could build on that, one of the things that I noticed early on in this, like in March and April, was the people who were already in the habit and the organizations that were already in the habit of values-based and purpose-based decision-making, they pivoted fast in ways that were in the direction that they wanted to go. And the people and organizations that weren't already in that were throwing a coin and tossing a coin and trying something and seeing what happened.
Yeah. So let's take that, if we could, and just think, let's switch. Starting to get in a little bit into the future, but I want to just take what Sherrie and Kate just said as an example. But when you think about going forward, what are some of the things that we need to be doing? What are some things we want to focus in on? What might be like either a lesson that we carry that we're going to apply this year? So think about one word or one phrase, and let's do that, and we'll get back into the conversation about the future, the foresight, looking ahead in the future. How do we move into action here? Where do we want to go?
So I'll start where I think that one of the modalities that I use is a think experiment, and it's based on the premise that the quality of the actions that we take is based on the quality of the thinking that we do beforehand. And setting the environments up in order to be able to facilitate that thinking, because when we are in that survival, we know from the neuroscience that we're in fight or flight, we're actually not thinking clearly. So how do we set environments up that we can calm that down and be that for each other so that we can support each other to do our best thinking and therefore take quality actions out of that thinking?
Okay, great. Okay.
All right.
Who's next? Somebody else? Thank you. Yeah.
Well, yeah, with forward thinking, I think for 2021, I would want to ensure that I'm agile. So I would say agile in 2021. And by that, I mean being physically and mentally nimble, quick to move. Because in 2020, we already learned what's happening and how we need a transition. And so in 2021, I feel that we need to be more receptive to change and move along with the change. And not overthink everything and overanalyze everything and forget to continue to move. So being agile and ready to adjust to whatever is thrown our way, that's going to help us continue to move forward. So that's how I want to go into 2021, with that agile thinking, with the not being afraid to change, to move with the way the wind is blowing. And I'm thinking this is not the only way, but a positive way to approach going into 2021. Going with the flow of what is driven and what is given to us, so that we're able to keep a positive mind frame. And so that's kind of what I think on moving into 2021.
I'll jump in. That was very good, by the way. I'm just nodding and agreeing. One of the words that came to my mind as I was thinking about this, about the virtual conference earlier, and the word was reinvent. And I looked up a definition really quickly, and I wrote down the act or process through which something is changed so much that it appears to be entirely new. And when I read that, I sat with that for a moment, and I said, that describes what 2021 needs to look like. A lot of times we're so used to how things used to be that it's hard for us to transform into what things can be and so much better with it. So one of the words I'm taking is to reinvent myself. I don't want to look like I looked before. I mean, with each wave, new technology, new opportunities, being open to what that looks like, being open to change, being open to stepping out into new territory, being open to be on a call like this with people in South Africa and in the US, and I'm here in Barbados, being open for new possibilities. So reinventing ourselves so much that we feel different, that we act differently, that we think differently. So that's one word I want to leave for 2021.
Alan?
Yeah, thanks. So I like consistency. So I'm going to stick with the same root word. And when I look at 21, to me, it's all about relevance. What is relevant next year? And in many different facets, from a family, personal life, team, what's relevant and what's important to other people. But from a business perspective, our opportunities for each business and us as consumers to exercise what is relevant and what's important to us. Whether you're talking about an airline who's decided to keep middle seats empty. That's very relevant if you're going to be traveling, or cleanliness, or local businesses, whatever it might be. I think it's going to be just incredibly important going forward to pay attention as business leaders of what is in fact relevant today, and the opportunity to really maximize that. I think there's an opportunity for companies to become employers of choice in frameworks that maybe they couldn't compete in the past. The work from anywhere type of policies allow companies to be highly relevant in markets and space where they maybe weren't relevant. I had never really thought about maybe hiring someone in Barbados, but now why not? Right? It doesn't matter to me whether they're there or they're in South Africa or whatever. If they can work across the hour. So I think it's really changed our nature and our ability to be relevant.
So I think I have one. I love that, Alan. So I think big surprise to you guys. I'm going to come up with another movie reference here. I'm a big Star Trek nerd, and my favorite of the Star Trek movies was Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And I think the word that I would pick that's inspired by that movie is three-dimensional. There's the bad guy in the film, if you haven't seen him in a while, Ricardo Montalban plays Khan, who's sort of the big bad guy, genetic Superman, but he's so driven by vengeance. You know, he wants to get back at Captain Kirk and take him out. And they end up having this cat and mouse game with their ships going through this foggy nebula and trying to find each other. And Spock makes this observation and says, you know, his patterns of thinking seem to be two-dimensional, Captain. And the way that they come at him is they come at him from a different angle that he wasn't expecting. He was thinking in terms of a plane instead of this three-dimensional realm. And I think, you know, for me, 2021 has got to be more three-dimensional. I want to challenge my thinking on different levels and get stronger at looking forward. And if we can have that kind of multi-dimensional thought, I think we can all be a little bit stronger for it. So that, for me, that's kind of the challenge and why I'm doing events like this, because I want to learn from all of you guys and all the great ideas that I've learned from each one of you in the series of conversations we've had as one-offs. It truly is a powerful community. So thank you for that.
You know, I want to sort of jump in now because you've sort of given me the link that I needed to put a bunch of thoughts together. So thank you. Because the word that came to me as I was initially thinking was integrate. Like, I want to see integration happening, but integration by itself is not enough. I want to have transformational, multi-dimensional integration because there's been so much learning, so many, once again, at all the different levels of organization that we have, we've learned our limits in some real ways, and we've learned what was good about what worked before and what new things we were missing. And I want that all to come in and integrate as a more multidimensional system that is more inclusive and more capable than what we had before, pretty much at every level of my life that I look at, whether it's the world or my family or actually internally to my own psychology. And I'm with Sherrie. I don't recognize myself in some really important ways as a result of this. And I think that there's more of that to come.
That's great.
Yeah. So if Kate, you
So,
said it
Kate,
so.
I don't know if this is.
Sorry, Alan.
Yes, go ahead.
Kate, I'm not sure if this is what you were talking about or not. So help me out. And when you were explaining that, what it made me think about is just the separation or lack of separation between personal and in business now, with everyone at home and all the videos, how that relationship with something that's so much bigger than just that other person or their professional presence has dramatically changed. Is that where you
So that's
hitting
one
at that
example. Yeah, that's
not?
absolutely one example of what I'm talking about. And I've seen it at multiple levels in terms of how organizations are relating to the other organizations that they relate with, how people relate with themselves, how parents relate with their kids. Like, I'm just seeing it at so many levels.
Okay. We're going to say something. I want to get that in, and then I would like to come back. Yeah.
Yeah, so from my side, I think for 2021, I would say that one should redefine or define the DNA and to come to a healthy core. Because if I think, so I like rock climbing. If I think about rock climbing, if I don't have a healthy core, I'm going to struggle climbing. And core for me is connected to what you said previously, some of you, my values. So my company values and how am I redefining my values now that I have some insights out of 2020? How am I creating new rituals, so small habits that can help me to still be agile, but still stay true to who I am? Because I think for me, agility is not just going with the wind, because if I just go wherever, then I lose myself sometimes. I don't think that's what you said, Araceli, so I'm not contradicting what you're saying. But the fact is that if I know who I am, if I know what's my DNA, my values, then I can shift as I should shift. And I can actually go into the chaos of 2021, because let's just be honest, 2021 is still going to be chaotic, but I can jump into it and learn as much as I can and grow from that as well. But if I don't have a healthy core, I'm going to sit on the sideline and just wait this thing out. And in 5 years' time, I'll be still waiting it out, because this is not the last crisis that we will face.
You know, to that point, I'd like to just add one is that I love all these I don't know whether you call them values or tips, suggestions. I'm also aware of, and I think about what I'm going through. I notice that when I go through, there's a lot of turmoil externally. Sometimes I need to go into incubation, and it's not a choice. I just see myself slowing down, like I'm not engaging. And there's this little voice on my shoulder, no, Whit, you should be, you should do, you know, and I'm going, no. And I've only learned that. So I think that's an important part, that things in the straight line, there's a rhythm, there's things that we have to pay attention to. And for me, what I find is really, really important is, if I take all the things we're talking about here, which I really agree with, it's also how do I connect with other people, creating the we. There's a bigger us. And through my relationships and my network with other people, whether it be organizational or personal or both, that expands and also supports me. Because when you think about the complexity and the multiplicity of all those things, I can't handle all that, but I know I can if I'm in good relationship with other people, because other people will bring up things that I might have missed.
Yeah. That's exactly one of the things that I wanted to say, which is I think being open, first of all, establishing those connections, but being open to listening to new ideas like we are doing with each other today, and allowing that to land on us instead of being one-dimensional or two-dimensional in our thinking and in the way that we are. No, for me, there's been things this year that have just challenged my whole way of thinking and my whole way of seeing the world, and I've really appreciated that. So to dive into that and pay attention to that, and be aware enough of ourselves of when we're pulling away from that because of our own beliefs or our own points of view. We're incorporating, in South Africa, diversity and difference plays such a big role in our culture, and welcoming that in. And I think we can do it on a multidimensional level globally.
I like the Well, I was just going to say, along with what you were saying, Heather, I like that. And also to tie in when we're also saying wanting to change and having that willingness to accept what's happening around us and the willingness to change. And then to size to what he was saying about being agile, knowing you need to move and having that willingness to move to what's comfortable to you, and then also moving out that comfort zone. So being open to that willingness, I think, is going to also play an important part for us in 2021.
Yeah, I don't want to pull up something that Whit said that I think is really, really important and easy to miss in all of this. We're all forward-thinking people with a level of awareness. And so there's this drive to move forward. And Whit pointed about, I sometimes need to retreat. And I think that the importance of rest in the development process is easy for those of us who are forward thinking to forget about. That we actually, as human beings, can only process so much data, or we are traumatized by it. And we're all overstimulated in many, many ways right now if we look at the whole. And part of what the transformation I think we're all going through individually and collectively is actually increasing our capacity to handle complexity. And part of that process of growing our capacity is we go to the edge and we go too far, and then we have to actually retreat and recover before we have built, it's exercising muscles, right? You go to the gym and you work out and you tear the muscles, and then they have to heal before you put the next workout on, or you've actually damaged the muscles. And I think that we need to remember that rest is crucial, and we're all going to need to rest at different places and times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to chime in on that. Someone said something earlier about 2021 being chaotic. And yes, I subscribe to the fact that just because everything else is chaotic around me doesn't mean I need to be chaotic. So I'm one of those people that just because you have an emergency doesn't make it my emergency, right? And it took some time to really get to that. I mean, I have 3 small kids that are always having emergencies, but in the reality, if you allow allow everyone to shift you every time they have an issue. You'll never be able to sit like Whit and just say, okay, now I need to sit and be still. Now I need to retreat and be quiet. And I think we need to retrain ourselves, especially, you know, going through corporate America. Everyone needs something yesterday. Everything is urgent. And one thing I've learned since I've only been here in the island for about a month and a half. They don't rush for anything. And it took me a little minute. It made me uncomfortable coming from the US, from Houston, Texas, coming here and everyone takes 30 minutes when I do it in 5. And I realized, like, what are you rushing for? You know, and so just having that mindset of when you start to recalibrate the way you think, recalibrate the way you process. So now rest becomes, it's a requirement. So we don't have a choice. Either we rest voluntarily or our bodies will sit us down. Right. So just chiming into what Kate said, we have to take that into account as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
I think the reality is that helps us to then build our core. Because there's a famous philosopher, he said, Romano Guardini, he said, life is lived between silence and speech. Silence and speech. If I just have speech, it's not healthy. If I just have silence, it's not healthy. So it's creating that healthy pace, to have that healthy pace in life that will build that healthy core for me to be able to keep on moving forward where I need to move.
So let's get this very real for us. And there's a question that's come up, which is about being tuned for 2021. I'd like to ask you, in what ways do you feel like you are better tuned or tuned for 2021? Just for yourself, in what ways you feel you're tuned?
I'll just hop in here because I think following on from what everyone's been saying, as I had this massive realization last week that much like you, Whit, I've got that thing on my shoulder saying, you know, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. Yeah. And that I hadn't stopped to celebrate any of the things that I'd done. I hadn't, you know, I finished my website and then it was just, oh, well, okay, the website's done, now I've got to move on to this. Or I've done this, or I've finished with this client presentation, I've got to move on to that. And so I think what I'm doing in terms of, you know, taking forward into 2021 is to slow down and do those little celebrations, whether it's taking my daughter to the beach and just chilling out, or it doesn't have to be a financial thing. It's more meaningful actually just to have those relational things happening, going for a picnic or a walk. And I think that taking that into 2021 is celebrating it and training, because that's actually training our brains as well to become more resilient as we move into those.
Great. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful.
I think within going into 2021, I'm taking in valuing time more and not always believing that I'll have more time. And I've always been a very structured person, and every minute of my day is probably planned out from the time I wake up to get my son ready to school, to go to school. And so I was like, okay, this, everything was timed out. And so, and you think that you're managing time well, but you're not really valuing your time with yourself. And it's like one really small change that I made in my personal life and that I want to take on and expand on in 2021 is, because I said my days were always planned out, that included waking my son up. Okay, wake up, get ready for school, eat, drink. And I ended up putting him on that same rhythm of get up, go, 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 go. And something I started to do is I backed his time up and we wake up 10 minutes earlier.
There you go.
Sit in the bed and talk about, hey, so what's going on today? How did you sleep? And doing things of that nature, making more conscious efforts of valuing your personal time. And so I think going into 2021, that is something I'm really going to be focused on. Is my time just planned out, or am I finding value in the time of the things that I'm doing?
That's great. That's wonderful.
That feels like exactly the place for me to jump in, because I feel more tuned in precisely the opposite way. And it's because my natural instinct is to use as little structure as possible to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And I've always been an improviser. And my capacity to handle complexity in an improvisational fashion has been incredible. And I've managed to accomplish all sorts of things. And 2020 really pushed my capacity beyond what I was previously capable of improvising. And so I've actually created more structure, more things that I'm delegating, more things that I'm offloading to systems so that I can do more because more is being demanded of me.
It's a form of relevance, isn't it? What's relevant for you?
Right. And so structure has become relevant in a way that it wasn't.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I will be taking into 2021 is more patience, because I've learned how to be a homeschool mom while running 2 businesses, being married, cooking dinner while talking to clients on Zoom. And so to be patient with the process, I am very go. So like Araceli said, I taught my children to be that as well. And now I realize, like, what am I making you rush for? Let's take some time to have some more family time. Let's take half days off and go to the beach. Let's do some things that you will remember when you grow older, instead of having a mother and a father that works all the time, right? So patience, spending more quality time with those that I love. That's what I'll be taking in 2021.
It sounds like the people around you, Sherrie, will be good pace setters for you then, won't they?
Absolutely.
That's great. How about others? We only got a few more minutes. So just anybody else want to add some things before we do some closing?
Yeah, I think for me, you asked the question, am I more in tune with going into 2021? And I think the only way I will really be able to tune into 2021 is in community. And I've really learned that I don't know it all. I knew it beforehand, but it really revealed it to me. And I think things like this, the community of my family, the community of my colleagues, together we can birth something new, but on my own I can't. So I think just staying in community and really listening, taking time to spend and do life together will give me the energy to do whatever I need to do next year.
That's great. That's great. Good. Anybody else want to add to that?
Many of you are saying, many you're saying the same thing, right? And to me, the words that resonate is purpose, right? And being deliberate. What are my priorities in the next year, both professionally and personally, and sticking to that, and not just meandering down the stream, but really making active decisions and what is it that you really want to accomplish or do, and then setting out to do it. And that's kind of what I'm hearing from all of you in just kind of different words.
I want to add one more quick thing. One thing that I learned is to not expect everything to be perfect all the time. I used to live in a world where everything had to be aligned. Things behind me need to be straightened. My children need to look a certain way. My house. Now I've learned to go with the flow. Things we're on Zoom. Dogs are barking. Kids can cry. Things can happen. Like I've learned to loosen up a little bit. Because everything has been so stringent. Because even now, when you watch the news, they're doing it from their homes. Like literally, we can adjust anything as long as we are open to it. So my mindset has expanded that the world is not in this perfect little bubble of how I see it. I've learned to now say, okay, then we have to be more flexible. Sure, we have to be more flexible at all times.
Great. Okay. Todd, you got anything you want to add?
No, I absolutely love this. I think we're at a good point to maybe wrap things up. Sai had challenged us each to talk about maybe who we were becoming. Maybe that's something to add to the comments to this after the event is closed here. You can find it up on YouTube, certainly. I just kind of wanted to leave people with the just one thought going into 2021. We talked about maybe going backwards and kind of taking the moment to recover and before we move forward. I wanted to add a similar exhortation that think about all that we've made it through this year. We're good enough. We've become more resilient. And what lessons can we take forward into the following year? But the best thing I can give you guys is you've got this. You who are on the panel and you who are in our audience looking at this, I think that we've proven we have strength, and hopefully I think people have gotten out of this that there's some greater resilience we can build into ourselves going forward by being more deliberate, more thoughtful, more multidimensional, and I think this was really powerful today. So thank you all for participating. This is going to be live on the replay on YouTube and Facebook. So if you in our audience have seen this or come across this, we would love to hear from you and to get your thoughts and ideas and input, because we're all on this journey together, and I'm thankful for all of you who are able to join us today. I really love you guys, and I feel like we're really building a community here that to me is certainly precious. I know it is to Sai and Whit as well. So thank you all for participating, and I know we're going to have another session coming up this afternoon. One or two of you are going to be joining us for that. We welcome that, and we'll look forward to further catalyzing conversations in the near future.
To each of you, thank you so much. It was a really honor to be with you all. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was wonderful to learn from all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great.
Bye-bye.